So guys, I've just received and unpacked my KEF KF92 subwoofer. This is the predecessor to the KC92. There's a couple of reviews already on this on YouTube which go into the specifications, so I'm not going to go into that. All I wanted to do was just give somebody that was potentially looking to buy the subwoofer an idea for connections, because there's not really much that goes into the high pass filter. So the sub itself, at the minute, I've got connected up to my Cyrus stereo, which goes into my KEF R7 Metas. These KEF R7 Metas for my room size are pretty much perfect. It's just that tiny little bit of low end that I needed. I had a REL sub before, which was great. However, it was too big for the room that I've got, and I decided to go with a sealed cabinet instead of a ported one. So this one I got on manufacturer refurb. There's a slight dink in the cone, you can't really see it. With the drivers on the side of this sub, they're not presented like they would be in a normal sort of ported sub where you've got the driver on show at the front. And my previous REL was lovely, you know, it was nice to see that carbon fibre driver. However, for this, it's a smaller unit. I can fit it in between my speakers. There is a DSP switch on the back, so if you're going to place that into a corner, you can select that. You've also got options on there. If you live in an apartment, you can flick that, and I presume that just either turns the gain down or does something to limit the sub's capability. So what I really wanted to talk about is the high pass filter on it. So for me, I've got a 2-channel stereo with Cyrus. I've got no control over crossover. So the speakers that I had before were the R700s, which were lacking in bass compared to these KEF R7 Metas. However, I couldn't change the crossover on the speakers, and I could on the sub. So I could blend it, but the speakers are always going to play full range. Some people will say that that's exactly how stereo should be, and you should let the speakers play all the frequencies that they're designed to do and let the internal crossovers sort it out within the speaker, which is fine for me. I've had it like that for probably about 7 years. However, now I've decided that I'd give it a go. Now there's a passive filter built into the sub. So at the minute, I come out of my preamplifier. There's 2 phono inputs on the back of the subwoofer, and there's another 2 outputs which go on the phono cables into my power amplifier. So I've got this set at the minute on the high pass filter at 50 Hertz. These speakers are really capable and go down quite low. So I've gone lower than the recommended, the sort of 80, 70 Hertz, and gone a little bit lower so I can get the most out of the speakers. But then for really bassy sort of film scores, you know, EDM, dance music, I'm letting the driver in the sub do the hard work, so it takes a little bit off the top of my stereo 200. So yeah, that feeds into the back of here, and then there's a knob which is on the very top of the sub there, which you can adjust your crossover for your low pass filter, which I've currently got set at 70 Hertz. So 50 Hertz on the high pass filter and 70 Hertz on the crossover for the low pass. Now, I've not experienced any dips or nulls or boomy bass or anything like that. I've played a variety of different music. I started off at 60 Hertz. So the manual itself will tell you there's a little switch on the back, and you set the 0 and 1s depending on what frequency that you want that set to. And I just found that there was a Skyrim track that I previously played on my Cyrus 200. There was some really low drum bass on there, and it would always cut out and go into protection mode on that one particular song for some odd reason. I've played it again, now I've got it connected up to the sub, and it doesn't cut out. So it must be something that the impedance drop on these speakers, which go down to about 3 ohms, is causing the stereo 200 to cut out. The amplifier itself is designed to work with these sort of speakers. However, it's rated at 4 ohm speaker, not down to 3. However, now my sub's doing most of the work. I'm not really too concerned about changing the amplifier, although I did originally look at going to a Nord monoblock setup just for them low impedance dips. I play my music quite loud. I listen to different film scores and listen to quite a lot of dance music, and the sound pressure in the room with the sub is great. It sort of blends into the back, whereas my rail subs before, they've been a little bit boomy, possibly down to the room size. A lot of people say it's to do with the setup and configuration that I've used. However, my last sub was on minimum gain, and the crossover was quite low. There was not really any other way of changing the sound of that subwoofer without moving the speakers and the sub around, which in my room there's not capacity for that. So this one was a lot smaller. It fits nicely in the back there. I have put it on an isolation pad. I've tested these isolation pads before. Some months I'll have it on, some months I'll have it off, just to see the difference. But what I wanted with this sub was that thumping chest bass. I don't want the vibrations. The wood door frames and the walls are not great in this house, so I don't want the vibrations that you get, which, you know, ultimately everybody else next door can hear. I want something that was going to give me punchy bass and was going to go well with these speakers, which it seems to do great. You can connect it up via LFE. I don't use this system at all for TV. I use the Sony AV stand for that. It's purely for music. So for me, it wasn't an issue not having a larger cone driver on the subwoofer, because I don't need it for the special effects stuff, which I've got on a separate system. So yeah, overall, happy with it at the minute. I'm going to test it over the next few weeks and hopefully we get on fine with it.